Hello, my name is Bill. I'm the pastor at Freedom's Lutheran Church here in Gibbsville, North Carolina. Thank you for joining me for a moment of reflection and devotion. Last night and at other times during this past week or so, I've had conversations with people about how to combat fear in the world and also to how to maintain a non-judgmental presence in the world. Both of those, not being filled with anxiety and not being pressed into judgment, seem to be kind of opposite the way people were being drawn or led. They would express to me that it seems like, every time they turn around, there's something new to be afraid of. There's some new calamity that has happened. They might fear it's going to happen to them, or they're fearful for the other people who are trying to survive and make the way through it. It seems like also, too, there are oftentimes people feel pushed to make judgments about right and wrong, but in their heart of hearts, they feel like they have no business judging the rightness or wrongness of somebody's actions. How is it for you? Paul talks about it as getting tossed to and fro by the winds of the world as they blow. Do you find yourself at times without anchor, like you are a ship that's being tossed around by the wind and the waves, whatever the world conjures up and rocks your boat with? Maybe you do. And how do we get around that? How do we maintain a non-anxious, non-judgmental presence in the world? Well, we remember, and that's key, we remember what God calls us to do. We remember what God says to us and God asks of us. And what does God ask of us? God asks, instead of fear, to be people of faith. Faith produces confidence to move forward. Faith produces in us an openness to be able to think about taking the risk of trying something new. So we are called not to be people who cower in fear, but people who walk with the boldness, inspired by faith, inspired by that trusting relationship with God. So that's how we deal with the anxiety, with the fear. How do we then combat that sense of being pressed to judge other people? How do we maintain a non-judgmental presence in the world? Well, God asks us to do something different there as well. God asks us not to move into judgment, but acceptance of the other people. Now, acceptance of others does not mean condoning bad behavior, does not mean condoning immorality. Acceptance means we start by moving toward the other person with a kind of love, suspending our judgment, moving into and listening to their story so that we might come to understand them better, first and foremost, and then in the midst of that understanding, in the midst of the listening, be able, after hearing their word, if they're open to it, give them a word back, show them a different way. Literally love them into a different way of being. You see, when we maintain that non-judgmental presence, we give the other person a safe place in which to genuinely express themselves. And in that midst of that genuine expression, we have a chance to genuinely express ourselves, in particular, our faith in our Lord, and how our Lord leads us into a truly righteous way to live. And in the midst of that give and take, God uses that opportunity to transform us both. So those are some clues, or those are some keys. Those are the kind of things that I talked about and shared with other people. Now, I call this kind of a quiet or passive kind of living in faith. And if you think about it, the Bible gives witness to those who were quiet and passive. In Romans, Paul is talking about the people of Israel, and in particular, people of Israel during the time of Elijah. And Elijah was having a hard time because he thought everybody was pretty much out. He thought everybody had turned their backs upon God. But Paul then talks about what God told Elijah, and that there were a righteous remnant that had been chosen by grace. He says, in particular, I have kept for myself 7,000 who have not bowed a knee to Baal, to the foreign god. What does that mean? That means there were 7,000 people who are quietly, passively doing the right and righteous thing, worshiping God. And we do that too, in a spirit of non-anxiousness, in a spirit of non-judgmentalism. And we allow ourselves then to have God work through us to touch other people. Thank you so much for this time together. You're welcome to go to our website, www.freedens.church, freedoms.church, to see more videos. God willing, I'll see you tomorrow.